everyone, and welcome to Diversifying Data. I am your host, Rakhi Sharma, and today I am so happy to be celebrating Black History Month with two incredible people who I will let introduce themselves in a second. This is a really important month. It's a month that I think deserves a conversation. I would like to first start off with the guest to my left, Keisha Christie-Morgan. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yep. Hi everyone, my name is Keisha. I'm the Client Acquisition Director here at Kubrick Group, pronouns she, her. Visual description?
Visual description, yes, please.
So I am a Black female, 5'6". Sometimes my hair is black and curly, sometimes it's in braids, sometimes it's brown, sometimes it's an afro, sometimes it's red. You know, it changes, so let's not maybe use that as a description for who I am.
How about every day looks fabulous?
Oh, thank you. I'll take that. I will take that, yeah.
There you go. We're starting on a positive
There
note.
it is, yeah. Brown eyes. Naturally, my hair is black. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Fabulous. And we have Alex joining us today. So Alex, if you wanted to give a bit of an intro to who you are and a bit of a physical description, that would be great.
Yes. Hi. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a data product consultant here at the Kubrick Group. Joined here about a year ago. I'm a Black male, about 5 foot. I'm going to say 5'11". 5'11" on a good
You're
day.
still a guy.
Yeah.
This is such a typical guy thing. I love it.
I have very little to basically no hair. Brown eyes. What else about me?
You're wearing a really nice jumper, I will say.
Thank you.
Yeah, very stylish. I think we've all come with a very similar colour palette today, which I'm enjoying.
See, because yesterday I feel like I missed the calling and everyone wore black, and I was like,
yeah, Keisha wore a denim dress, which I thought was great. It was to stand out amongst the crowd. You looked great. But without further ado, I wanted to kick off by announcing the theme of this year's Black History Month 2023, which is celebrating our sisters, which I like any month that not only highlights struggle and how far we've come, but also creates a celebration of something, whatever it might be. So in the spirit of, celebrating our sisters, I'd like to kick it off maybe slightly differently to the way that I've kicked other podcasts off. And I'd just like to hear, who do you two individually celebrate within your community? I wanted to say, female would be great in sticking with the theme, but it could be anyone from your community that either inspires you or you see a lot of yourself in them, whatever it may be. So Keisha, I'm going to start with you.
why would you do that? Why would you?
I mean,
why would you not give me a couple minutes
I'm
to like really
sorry.
digest
If
that and
anyone
think
thought
about
that I
it?
was going to cut you any slack on this podcast, they don't know us very well.
I was wrong.
Yeah,
I was wrong.
Correct.
So I think thinking about like personal inspirations around me, I think I'd have to say my grandmothers. So they were part of that early migration. I don't know if it was technically Windrush. It may have just been a little bit later, just a tad after that. But they were, they came to the UK to seek better economic opportunities. And my God, did they definitely do that. But to have come from, Jamaica, where they were relatively self-sufficient, they had land, they had farming, owning their own homes, to then coming to the UK where things were obviously very, very different. Yeah. And the story that they always tell me is they arrived and they just couldn't understand how cold it was, and like just try and picture that going from like,
Jamaica,
this little island paradise, to a country that is cold, grey, and they weren't exactly met with the warmest of welcome either, despite coming here with the best of intentions to want to do better for their families, to want to provide and, be a part of the community, be part of the culture, be a part of, everything that England does have to offer. And I just think sometimes, as second, so my dad was also born, so second generation, second or third, depending on which side of the family we look at, generation immigrant, it's astonishing to me that somebody would make that sacrifice for their future children. Yeah. And I think sometimes, we can take that for granted and not realising or fully understanding or appreciating the extent of that sacrifice.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's easy to almost forget about it because it didn't it's had a direct impact on your life, but thinking about the struggle that came before is not always easy because you can't always relate to it directly. So I think this is a really important thing to do, is to celebrate the people that you really admire and to highlight the experiences that maybe they had that had actually inadvertently shaped you, because I wouldn't have met you and that would have been terrible.
Oh my God, could you imagine?
No, horrible. So Alex, same question over to you. If you could just tell me just anything around people that have shaped you in any way, I'd be really excited to hear that.
Yeah, similar story. My grandparents and particularly, well, my grandfather as well, but I want to focus on my grandmother, matriarch of the family, came over, part of the Windrush generation, moved to the UK, I think, when she was like 17 or something, to become a nurse. Didn't know anyone. She was the first one from her family to leave home. I think she had to borrow money just to pay for the boat fare to come to the UK. Wow. So she literally left with nothing. Just to, well, at the time it was for a better future for her. And then she had my mom, and then my mom had me. And she's always said everything she does from when my mom was born and from when I was born is for us. Yeah. And I've seen that through since I was born. At school, she used to, every single day she came and picked me up from school, ironed my clothes, helped me with my homework where she could, come to my school plays, come to Christmas discos.
Christmas discos. Oh, what a simpler time. Oh my God, yes.
She was always there, and not my mom. My mom's always been present, but she's always worked full time since I was 2 or something. So she's been busy. So it's been really good to have that support system there from my mother and my grandfather and also my grandmother, where I guess she didn't really have to. She's 80 something, 86, 87.
That generation are built from different things though. I'm telling you, that level of strength that they had and continue to have throughout their lives is astonishing. And I think that that's really reflective of the way that we do admire them for that struggle over time. But, you know, in terms of where you've got to, I'm always really interested in the personal stories, because the people that you've obviously connected to and have admired are personal connections of yours, because sometimes people don't have that figure within their own immediate circle that they have as a figure to celebrate in their own lives. So they look externally for that, similar face or similar background to admire. But it's really nice that both of you have that family connection with it. So talk to me a little bit about each of your journeys in terms of getting here professionally, because I think we want to gear this more towards the workplace and how the Black experience is within your lives and also what we can do to improve it. So I guess, Keisha, having been more senior in your career and Alex having started out, there's going to be some different...
like old. All I heard was older, and I was like, why would you?
Listen, if you do the time, I'm going to call you. See, you put in the time here. So I was going to say, maybe we should start with you, because you'll have had different experiences in different places, and it'd be good to hear the highs, the lows, the pitfalls of your personal experience as a Black woman.
Oh, the pitfalls. Where do we start? So I think, I excelled quite well at school, like academically, and I think there was always this big push, and I think there is a lot with, the children of immigrant parents, where they're like, we have, they are so aware, so conscious of the sacrifices that they made, that you really do wear that burden.
Of course.
You've got to make the most out of the opportunity. So, homework is always, if you're not getting 100%, it's like, what are you doing? You are doing something wrong, because they're like, I did not leave paradise to come here. You don't get literally 10 out of 10 on your exam. So
it's true. It's true.
Yeah, I know you know.
I do know. Indian parents are no different. If it's not an A, if it looks even remotely like a B,
you hide. The test hasn't come back yet. It hasn't come back yet. She lost the paper. That's what happened.
That's right.
Because there is that shared, immigrant experience. But I think, thinking about how it affected me, particularly as a Black woman, you're constantly sort of told this narrative around this, and it kind of reinforces this belief in you that you can't.
Yeah.
And it's quite a scary thing, because, when you think about, young people, and you want them to be ambitious, and you want them to be bold, and you want them to dream, the story that you're presented with is, actually, you can't.
Yeah.
The story that you're sort of seeing around you is, actually, there aren't Black people at that level, and there aren't Black people who are successful in the mainstream media. Thankfully, that is changing now, and it's so beautiful to see better representation. But growing up, that just simply wasn't the case. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't. Didn't have those role models that were present in the media, aside from entertainment. But let's be really frank here. I think even in the most racist of times in British history, they've always been happy with Black people being in entertainment.
Yeah. Because they were entertainment.
No need to go too far into that, but don't need to. But to have that representation and say, in business, in politics, in other areas of life where you can say, actually, if I can overcome the barriers that are presented to me, because I think the key thing to remember is, you know, being black isn't the barrier.
Yep.
It's the racism that and the structural imbalances that are in place that prevent you from getting to where you get to. And so I think I've had highs and lows in my career, in my experiences as a black woman. And, you know, I've had wonderful positive experiences while working here at Cubic, which is amazing. In previous employment, that has not always been the case. So I know I joked earlier about, you know, me changing my hair, but that is very much a black female experience, to play with weaves and extensions and wigs and all these other things that we do to just, you know, express ourselves and have a little bit of fun with it. Yeah. And I remember the first time I changed my hair in one of my previous employments, and somebody walked up to me and said, "You look like a Nubian queen." It was at that moment I knew I would leave this place.
Yeah. I mean, was that something that you felt, was that quite early on in your career? Because I do also feel like the higher up, the senior you get, sometimes people have that layer of guardedness and protectiveness around saying the wrong things. Whereas if you're junior, I feel like there is also that level to being like, well, you know, she's
think about it.
Yeah,
Don't have to
exactly.
think about what I say in front of her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So do you feel like that's
that
sort of
has I'm sure that definitely played a part when thinking about who said it.
Yeah.
And I know in their heart of hearts they meant that as a compliment.
Correct.
I
Yeah.
know they meant that with really sweet intentions and trying to give me a compliment. But why can't you just say, "Your hair looks nice"?
Yeah. Yeah. You wouldn't go up to a Caucasian woman and describe them in the way of like saying, "You look like Queen Elizabeth."
Yeah, exactly. Like that's what's so weird about they made that compliment about me being a black person, about me being a black woman, not just like a compliment about a change that I'd made to my appearance.
Right. If it was referencing that element of it. Yeah.
Like if your white female colleague came in and had dyed her hair brown or black from blonde, you would, like you said, you wouldn't go up to her and be like, "Oh my gosh, you look like Dolly Parton."
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the equivalent.
No, I know what you mean.
But do you know what I mean? Like you wouldn't do that to
Yeah.
somebody. So why did that person feel comfortable highlighting my race?
Yeah.
When all I'd done is just change my hair. Like just say it looks nice and move on.
I understand. And the fact that that experience, even it might be so minute to you, that's why I think personal stories are so important, because that's clearly something that stayed with you over time.
Oh, it has, because what it told me is he sees me as a black employee.
Right.
He sees me as a black woman, not as I won't say the title or anything because people go on my LinkedIn and figure out what job this was at.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, what it told me was like, this person didn't see me as a professional. It told me they didn't see me as the job I was in or anything else. It told me that they didn't really respect me as a person, but they saw me primarily as a black woman.
Right.
And that is how they would then treat me, is as however they would then think about treating a black woman. And that can be positive or negative or a little bit creepy and fetishization, all that sort of weird stuff that can come with that. But that's what it told me in that moment.
Yeah.
I don't think people quite understand the impact of the words that they're saying when they say them to somebody like that. That really did stay with me. Thankfully that has never happened here. People just compliment it and just move on, or say nothing. Say nothing is also an option.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you know what I mean? If anyone's ever unsure.
Yeah. But do you know what? It's nice that you've had such a good experience here, because I think sometimes people, especially in their career and especially early on, which is why I'm so keen to hear your experiences being early out of the gate. I think it's like when people say, you know, your childhood experiences shape you as an adult. I also think in your career, it's almost like you're starting out as a child when you're newly into the workforce, and those early career experiences coming from either race or gender or feeling othered in some way can really shape the way that you view your future career. So I think it's nice that you've had the two to be able to understand what good or better looks like.
Yeah. Definitely. I've definitely had those experiences where I'm like, oh, I am being treated slightly differently in these scenarios or in the experiences that I've had compared to like here, where I feel like I'm seen as, I'm Keisha, I'm the client acquisition director.
Right.
And that's great. That's amazing. That's who I want to be, right? I'm a professional in the workplace. That is who I am. That's what I do. Let's leave it at
Bloody
that.
good at it.
And
I don't know if I can swear, but you're very good at it.
But you know, that is. I think that's all that black people are really asking for when we say these things, especially black women, is to not reduce us to just, you know, a
look
yeah,
or a type
or a stereotype
Yeah.
of what that means to be. And yes, our experiences and the way that we all walk through life will be different and layered, but I don't want to then be boxed in and treated as such.
I agree with that completely. And okay, so coming into the inverse of it, someone who is very new but has I believe you started your career journey with Kubrick. Is this your first?
Yes.
Okay.
I actually started before I even finished uni, like just after my last exam, and I accepted the job.
Oh,
offer,
that's
so.
amazing. Well, we are very, very lucky to have you here. And I'm keen to hear about your experience, because I've touched more with Keisha, I guess, on the professional side of things. But from your side, it's been obviously very education heavy up until recently. So what's your experience been like within education and coming into Kubrick as a first employment?
Yeah, within education, it was quite interesting. At school, I went to a very predominantly white. I was like one of 2 or 3 black people in the year. So I've never, Black History Month for me, I hated at school because it felt like I'm supposed to know everything about
And it shone a light on you.
Yeah. And people look at me as if to say, oh, do you know about that? Have you experienced that? And it was just a lot of pressure. And until very recently, actually, I genuinely did not like month. I never really personally felt valued. I felt like it was always more of a burden to me. And then I went to university in Scotland.
Oh, where did you go?
I went to Glasgow.
Oh,
I went
lovely.
to University of Glasgow. Lovely uni, made lovely friends there, but I did have some very interesting experiences with either students or lecturers, which at the time I tend to just brush things under the rug. I tend to just think, okay, whatever, they're silly. But then later on, I'm realizing that, oh, okay, this has affected me in different ways, and I can't just pretend it never happened. And one of the most significant marking events was a business tutorial I went to. And we were speaking about Nigeria. I can't remember the exact subject. We were talking about Nigeria, and I had read an article about Nigeria, and I gave my 2 pence. And then the tutor asked me, oh, so like, can you tell me more about this subject? And I said, oh, this is all I know. And he said, but isn't that not where you're from? And I was like,
In front of the whole class.
in front it was humiliating.
It just others you into feeling like you should know more.
Everything.
Yeah.
And I'm the spokesperson for all black people around the world.
That's so interesting.
And then I said, no, and then he's like, but you're from Africa, right? And I said, no.
Yeah.
It was one of the... I was speechless.
Terrible. I completely get that.
And it made me feel, even more... What's the word?
Othered,
isolated than I had ever felt since school. And humiliated. And I think coming into the workplace, I haven't had any bad experiences, I have to say. And I haven't had to feel like I'm the one spokesperson for black issues, and I haven't had to defend myself or trying to explain who I am. Another situation which happens quite often. People are shocked when I say my name or people read my name. I remember once in a tutorial, they were going through the register and they said, Alexander Benjamin. And I said, hi. And he said, oh, that's a surprise.
Oh, come on.
I at the time, I couldn't even process what that meant.
Oh my gosh,
and
that's incredible.
I feel like people expect to have one, like black people are one.
Yeah.
There's only one type of us, and we're all the same.
And we're all from Africa.
Yeah, we're all from Africa. We all have the same knowledge, and I feel like, I like to, since I've been at Kubrick, I've felt like an individual, and I feel like my opinions are valued and I'm able to speak freely. No one really had asked me at the time how I felt about these things. Yeah. I didn't even know where to go to or who to speak to at the university. There are many other sort of microaggressions. And I feel at least at Kubrick, I'm able to speak about them if they were to happen. And I feel like people would listen and action would be taken. So my experience in education
was very much.
Was very rough. I still had a great time at uni. Love Uni of Glasgow. not to bash them, but there were just a few instances which made me feel uncomfortable. And also, I didn't really have that many people to talk to about it who would understand
Absolutely.
either.
Shared experience.
Yeah, because people were in the tutorial were shocked, but I don't know how they truly understood, if they truly understood how that made me feel.
I don't think that's a real point. I think shared experience and support are the two things that move the needle on things, because if you know that, because in your head you build things up so much, whatever you're going through, but if there's someone else who can kind of not validate experiences, but go, okay, do you know what? I actually have faced something similar, and this is how I processed it and how I was able to successfully move on to it and create a positive environment for myself. That's something that's really helpful. So in the line of support, where do you guys think that the support is lacking? People that you see now, you were talking about comparatively, there's more figures in society that are successful, are driven, are doing really well. Do you feel like these constant conversations around needing more support and engagement between, colleagues or friends within the community is something that you want to keep driving home? Or do you, and would you individually like that to come about? Is it through work? Is it through other, mediums, groups?
I think any mediums would be good, but I feel like work's the most direct one. It's the most accessible for most people. Before I joined Kubrick, I had no sort of reference point of any Black role models within the finance sector. I'm sure there are plenty, but because I'm removed from that group, I didn't know who to look to. It was purely by chance that I've ended up at Kubrick, but luckily I've got Keisha. I've met plenty of people who I can talk to and ask for. Actually, I did ask you. I did.
That's brilliant.
I asked Keisha for help just to look over my profile, but before that, you sometimes feel alone, and knowing that there's this person at least I can count on. Yeah. And maybe, I guess, if there aren't any, there's no one from your community in your team at work, allyship again, active allyship. Hopefully there'd be someone. When I was at my last placement at an investment bank, there were a few people in my team who I felt like I could count on. I've had calls with to say, oh, can you help me with this? And I said, of course, anytime, I'm here to help. So even if there isn't necessarily someone who looks like me who can give me the support or mentorship I may need at times, as long as I know I'm unaware and it's clear that there's someone I can call to.
Yes, yeah.
That's very, very comforting. And I guess imposter syndrome as well, starting out. As I said,
that is real. That is really real.
I went from doing economics into, I guess, data and economics are linked. But again, going into the working world without any sort of... I had work experience, but not within the professional world, not working with these big corporations. Yeah. I sometimes get severe imposter syndrome. But again... It doesn't go away.
It's really... I would say that's a really difficult thing to tackle across the board, but that support that you're speaking of, it does really help. And I think that's across, gender. So there's females that you can go to that have that same connectivity to your experience. And I think what you're talking about is super important. I'm glad you found that here.
And I think that can encourage more people to go into industries where they feel like they wouldn't be welcomed or they wouldn't be supported if they're aware that there's someone there to help them.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about you? Do you think support at work is the most important thing, or do you think in other areas?
I think it's important to have them across the different aspects of your life. But I think, we spend so much of our lives and our week in the workplace. Yeah. It has to exist there as well, right? I think just touching on that imposter syndrome thing, like, oh my God, it's so bad sometimes, so bad. And then sometimes you're in a meeting room and you might be the only person of colour. I don't even like the term person of colour. I don't even know if I like the term person of colour, but let's say the only person not of English descent or European descent or whatever, I don't know, we'll figure out. Yeah. And you kind of look around and you go, you guys aren't smarter than me, actually. You just feel more comfortable in this space. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as you kind of like start to accept that is, what you're feeling isn't, hopefully not truly like, oh, I don't think I belong here, but more so, I'm not as comfortable in this environment as you are. And I just push try and push through it, because sooner or later you'll have that moment of realization where you kind of look around and you go, guys ain't better than me.
Yeah.
Somebody just older, got a bit more experience. You're just a bit more comfortable in this room than I am. I'm like, I will learn. I will figure this out. I will figure out how to be comfortable here. And if you do that for a few months or whatever, and you still don't feel comfortable, start asking yourself, are they making you feel welcome in this space? I think that's the second question I'll start to ask. Maybe it's not imposter syndrome. Maybe you aren't truly being welcomed into that space, and that's a different conversation. That's a different set of actions that you should then think about taking.
Can I ask a bit of a trickier question?
You can try.
I can try. So when you're talking about not feeling welcomed in a particular space, do you think that there's maybe because you're feeling that imposter syndrome and you don't want to be stereotyped as, oh, the loud black person or the this person, that person, do you think that you can take action, and not putting the onus on anyone, but do you think that you can take actions to set that precedent that, I'm here, whether you welcome me or not, I'm here and I'm driving this? It shouldn't be that way. But do you think that you could take any steps to do that?
Well, like me personally, could I do that?
Yeah. Or have you done that?
I think I've been fortunate enough that I didn't have to make anything like dramatic like that. I think what I was feeling was a sense, like what I have felt is a sense of discomfort and being like, oh crap, like when did I become the senior black lady in this team?
Oh,
so you know what I mean?
Real,
it was really like,
I understand.
I do, like, on reflection, I think I can be honest enough to say that on reflection, a lot of this was my own internal sort of mechanism where, been looking around so long for like a senior black female role model, and then I look around the room like, oh, it's me. I'm like, oh, when did this happen? Like, I didn't expect this. I was looking for somebody else to come and save me and show me how to do this. And now I'm like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing this.
I know, and you're setting the precedent for the younger generation.
Do you know what I mean? I'm like, when did that become what I have to do? Like, and it was a real real mind shift for me to kind of realize that actually, I guess, as horrible as it is, we still have a lot of firsts in this world when it comes to like black people and black females.
That's really true.
And I think it's a real challenge to kind of accept that you might be the first to do something. Because, when I know your Black History Month at school was not quite favourable.
It wasn't quite.
But I grew up in Southeast London. I had a black head teacher at my primary school and a mixed heritage. I think she was like South African, and I can't remember. Maybe she was South African, but one black parent, one white parent, maybe it was. I can't remember exactly. At my secondary school. And so thankfully for us, like, Black History Month was, yes, we did cover some history. Of course we did. You have to, the good and the bad. But a lot of it was about celebrating black heroes. And I think to have that experience, you talk about first a lot. You don't ever think it's going to be you in this decade, in this century. You kind of look at them and you go, oh my God, they're so amazing. They're so great. They're so strong and all the rest of it. And then one day it might be you. And I don't think that's
actually, I hadn't ever thought of it like that. That you're always looking for the idols and the people that came first so that you can model yourself after them. Yeah. But you may have to be that model for yourself and carve a path for
is terrifying.
Others. Yes, it is. I actually never thought of it like that.
That is terrifying. So sometimes if I think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, it's imposter syndrome or whatever. I'm like, no, I'm just freaking out because I'm looking around for somebody to show me how to walk this path. And I'm like, I can't find them. And I'm so grateful because, at least at Kubrick, there are other senior women in other teams who I can go to. I've got Dana, I've got Lorraine. Yeah. They are incredible.
Yeah, they are.
And I should probably lean on them a little bit more, but I don't. But in my space, in my world, I'm like,
yeah, I know. It's you. It's all the burden's on you, but also there's an immense like strength that builds up from that. And I think, coming to your point as well, being, in situations where you've been one of the only ones before, there must have felt a sense of that isolation and, oh my God, I'm almost the first to be in the investment bank, incredible, going to Glasgow to uni and maybe not seeing as many people. Did there ever feel a sense of like pride and accomplishment, or is it that same fear of like, oh God, I'm the first one here to do this? This is a lot.
I hadn't really reflected on, pride or accomplishment. And I think that's just from my perspective of Black History Month. It's always been looking back at slavery, what Black people have been through. Yeah. So I've never really celebrated even my own achievements, to be honest. And I'm not the first Black person who's worked at an investment bank, but it's Yeah, I don't really. I
Haven't thought. No, it's true, but I think that's why when you're talking about celebrating like the month, meaning celebrating your Black sisters, I think that obviously there's so many conversations we can have around Black History Month. There's history and there's growth and there's progression, but there's also a really like pivotal point of time that we can reference back to and so many things. But I think celebration is actually a really key part of it, because I look around and I see really, really accomplished people who everyone struggles in their own right. But I think celebrating your own accomplishments, and even though you've gone through your own experiences and felt othered, like you've come through that and you're doing remarkably well. So I think there's something to celebrate from that.
Thank you.
I wanted to pivot the conversation back to the workplace, and obviously celebrating Black History Month, and in particular understanding your experiences at work and in the workplace, being junior and being, I don't want to use the word senior again because I feel like it's triggering. More established? Experienced.
Yeah, we'll go with experience.
More experienced. So Kubrick specifically, you both have talked about how you've had a really, really positive experience here, how you haven't felt particularly othered, you felt well supported here. And I just wanted to kind of discuss the different initiatives that Kubrick's done to really try and create more of a diverse and inclusive environment for everyone coming through. So I know that there's been things such as Diversity Champions Committee that's been set up. And Alex, from what I know, you're a part of that. Do you want to?
Yes,
and Keisha. Oh, wow.
It's like you don't even know me.
I do, but I feel like I could just talk to you all day. So I'm going to come to Alex about your experience as a new Kubricker to come in and be part of that. What has that process been for anyone who's potentially looking to join part of the organisation?
Yeah, so I saw that there was an invitation for members to join the Diversity Champions, and at first I wasn't really sure what I could contribute as a Black gay man. I felt like I could, speaking to different members of the team, there's like a committee, Diversity Champions Committee, and there's a Diversity Champions Board. To join the committee, you have to be, there's a bit more commitment to it. You have to make sure you attend certain amounts of meetings a month, whereas the board is a lot more flexible. If you feel like you have an interest but you're not entirely confident at that point in time, you can join and see how it goes without having having too much commitment. And I originally just went for the board because I thought, well, I'll see how things go, and then maybe in a few months' time. But then speaking to Charlotte, I sort of felt empowered, and I wanted to give more.
That's perfect. I mean, from your perspective as well, you must have been here when because I know when I first joined, there wasn't obviously the Diversity Champion. So how did I'm interested to know how those conversations came about. You were obviously a part of it. So you were obviously involved in the initial conversations around the establishment of it. What were those about?
I actually wasn't.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I actually wasn't. And I think this is from my own experience of like not wanting to put myself out there too much. So when those initial conversations were happening, I kind of just went, that's cool. Let me just see how this plays out. Let me see whether this is something that is going to, like, are they going to get sponsorship to actually put on events, to actually make some noise, to do celebrations? And I kind of wanted to see how that, I just really kind of want to see. And then I think has it been around for 1 year, 2 years?
1 year,
just
I
1
think,
year,
yeah.
So after seeing it for the first year, I was like, right, this is something I do want to like put my face, my name
behind
towards as well.
Yeah.
And we've only had, how many meetings have we had now? Two,
almost 3 in a week or so?
Yeah, there'll be a third one soon,
wow,
right?
that's quite frequent. That's really, like, you are fully a part of an established organisation. There's meetings set. Are there like agenda points to address, or like how does that come about?
So there's a few different initiatives that we're hoping to run throughout the year. And I think what was really impressive was the amount of work that had gone into it prior as well.
Yeah.
So I think the other thing is, I think when we have employee working groups, there is often a lot of onus on the people who volunteer to then sit, put in a lot of extra hours, a lot of extra effort, a lot of extra work to then make these things a reality. And what I think is so amazing is that Kubrick seem to have the resources and the time available for people to dedicate that time to be able to create these agendas and create these points. So there's a calendar for the UK and the US about the things that we want to celebrate across the year. There are different initiatives that we are starting to create. I don't want to give away any surprises or any spoilers, so I won't say anything more. But, you know, it's really wonderful to see that there is effort and most importantly, money being put behind this, right? It's really easy for somebody to walk around with a camera, take photos and be like, we are diverse. Yeah. That is enough. What people really want to see is output. They want to see action. They want to see, what are we actually doing to promote inclusion? You can have, and I think this is why the conversation is always like, oh, are we diverse? Are we not? Okay, cool, whatever. What are you doing to actually make those people feel wanted, included, respected, valued in the workplace? Because historically, the structures that we have in work and in the world or whatever don't often favor certain groups. Yeah. So if you're not actively dismantling that, you're probably not doing enough.
True.
So I'm so thankful that, most importantly, there is money and effort and things being put into it.
Yeah.
And it's really wonderful to see.
Honestly, because that was going to be one of my questions. What can, people have a lot of tick box exercises, and that's what I talk about a lot on the podcast. Is a lot of these things around diversity, equity, and inclusion are nothing more than a tick box for a lot of organizations. So what are the tangible actions? And I think money is a really, really solid one to show that, okay, I actually care enough about this, and saying that we are going to put our money where our mouth is, so to speak. Like, that's a really powerful thing. So I would actively encourage, just from hearing both of your experiences of genuinely that this is something that Kubrick's pushing, I would actively encourage anyone working at Kubrick right now to apply. Is that an ongoing running application throughout the year, or how does that work?
I believe it's we've set up the committee now.
Yeah.
And it's full.
That's amazing. You can't sit with us.
But I believe that if someone leaves the team for whatever reasons, they have other commitments, or they leave Kubrick, and there's space, then they'll be open to someone else joining. Obviously, as it's a committee, you have to it has to be of a certain size for it to be effective, and for everyone to have a chance to contribute in a way. But again, there's the other broader team. I've been calling it the board or the panel, which is always open to people to join. And also it links to other initiatives. You can join, link to the Diversity Champions. This is a slight digress from Black History Month, but attached to the Diversity Champions are the other groups, the women's group at work, the parents group at work, the LGBTQ plus LGBTQ Kubrick plus. I miss Mr. Kubrick in that.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool. No, that's really great to see that there's so many ways that people can get involved. And I think sometimes it's just that people don't have the knowledge. Like there's not enough knowledge of what's included in these agenda meetings, or what sort of agenda you're trying to push forward, what sort of events there are, what webinars there are. So hopefully, people can start getting more actively involved, even from their feedback on what they'd like to see more of. And I think if there's a really solid forum for that discussion, then that just helps out in all regards. So I guess that another thing I wanted to talk about is our new initiative, which is the 10,000 Black interns program that we just took in. It was
so wonderful to see them.
I know. So we took in, what was it 10? I believe it was 10. That to me was such a powerful statement, and they all the interns seem to have a wonderful time. Like, they seem to really get a lot out of the experience. And I'm wondering if you had any actual experiences like that yourselves, or if you were able to connect with some of the interns that came through from that program.
It was really wonderful that we've got an initiative to kind of level the playing field a little bit.
Yeah.
I think when we think about interns and internships and all these other things, I think people assume that they're really, really easily accessible because the applications are online.
Nope.
That is true. They are there. They're right there. However, we do know that these processes are not always the most inclusive.
Yeah.
And especially if you are coming from a different background, you don't always have like the full context behind why certain questions are being asked, why you need to, present in a certain way. You don't have that full-fledged, like, rounded history and experience around you to kind of help guide and shape you in a way that you're like, right, yes, you can be an intern here. So it's great that, 10,000 Black interns does exist to kind of help create a bit more balance, because if you're coming from, particularly from a Black background, you may or may not have relatives, friends who work in professional services who can then help you shape and guide you through that interview process to help give you that, that confidence boost to say, actually, wear your hair how you want, wear your hair what makes you feel confident. Don't, go and get a perm or straighten it or anything like that. That doesn't exist within those communities. And so I just think it's putting your money, your effort where your mouth is. Yeah. If we are going to say that we are an inclusive organization, we need to do more than just saying, we've got lots of people from all different backgrounds, that's great,
and reducing it to a statistic.
Yeah, reducing us to a statistic and say, well, yep, there are black people here, they apply, they work here, this is great. I think what that showed me was that we are going above and beyond. We're doing more than our basic duties, like the legal tick box exercises, to say we want to see greater diversity in this space. And I think it's so important for an organization like Kubrick, who does hire so many graduates, like we hire a lot of them, and we want to grow and we want to keep doing that. I think we have to make sure that we're being conscious of who is coming through our scheme and what we are doing to the face of what it means to be a data professional. We're a company that is based in London. Yes, we work all over the UK. That is very much true. But the majority of our applicants do come from London. The majority of the clients we work with are also in London. So if our candidate pool of consultants is not reflective of the diversity in London, we should be asking ourselves a few questions about why that is and what we need to be doing to readdress that.
Yeah, that's beautifully put.
And just to touch on that point, I myself was an applicant for the 10,000 Black Interns program. That wasn't how I got to Kubrick, however, but just from a perspective of applicants, I think that it does also broaden people's perspectives and horizons, because when you apply to the program, they sort of walk you through how the process goes. They have different workshops to help you prepare for the interviews, like you said, and some applicants may not come from a background where they have someone to support them or give them the sort of unclear cues or which others from different backgrounds may have been taught from their parents or guardians. Broadening perspectives. I had applied to a scheme, so I'm trying to think about my thought process. When I applied to 10,000 Black Interns, I wasn't exactly sure where I wanted to go, and it sort of showed me that I could, if I wanted to work in finance, I could work in data, I could work in marketing, and a bit like what I mentioned earlier, there were role models in these places. Not that role models are always necessary, or they always need to be exactly like you, but it was good to see that it is possible, and there are people, if I do end up in this industry, there are people there who are like me and who are willing to support me. I couldn't recommend it more.
Yeah, well, that's amazing hearing that experience coming from someone who's actually been through that process. But in terms of, I guess, what we can be doing in work, I think sometimes what I was thinking about the other day is role models. Sometimes you always think that they're older than you, or they've come, like we said, you may have carved the path out for yourself to be a role model to juniors.
That still makes me nervous.
I know. It's a lot of pressure, but having peers and allies within your own, age group or bracket of where you're working in is also quite important. That element of seeing yourself in, like, whether it's from a gender perspective or whether it's from a sexuality perspective, whatever it is, it's seeing that perpetuated in the environment directly around you so that you feel super supported. I guess active allyship you touched on before. I'd like to maybe go back to that point a little bit and talk about your experiences, what you potentially would like to see more of. Yeah, that would be great.
In terms of active allyship, I would like to see more, perhaps from people of colour. There's the LGBTQ+ group, so I know I think the number of allies in that group, people who don't identify as non-hetero, is I think makes up half of the group. But from a Black perspective, I don't know if there is necessarily like a Afro-Caribbean group at Kubrick.
That's interesting.
So, if it wasn't for diversity champions, I probably may not have gotten to be able to speak to Keisha. And even though you see them in the office, it's quite intimidating sometimes as a consultant to be like, "Hi, how are you?
Yeah,
I'm such a big fan. Let's go
yeah, it is difficult.
Whereas if there's a group, and again, the group doesn't necessarily need to be composed of just Black people, but active allies. So I know Jake, for example. He's part of the group. I can go and chat to him, or if I'm in a meeting with him, I know he has my back. I think having a reference to go to, I think that would be good. A group.
You've got the cogs whirring and
I know. Because honestly, there's no such thing as a perfect organisation. There's no such thing as fully done, in my opinion, in any of these topics to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's always just taking that step in the right direction and really welcoming feedback from people to what would make them feel better, and hoping that other people relate to that experience and go, hey, yeah, do you know what? Me too. And then that moves the needle a little bit more. So you've given us food for thought to actually take that away.
It's really interesting what you said, right? Because I've definitely been in companies where I'm one of a handful of Black faces in the room, and I've always been really self-conscious of not wanting to accidentally be part of a Black group, being she's only friends with Black people, or do you know what I mean? And having that perception, which is, I appreciate that's happening in my head. I don't think anyone ever explicitly said that, but when you're one of a few people who identify a certain way, you do become a little bit more self-conscious about how you're presenting yourself and how that appears to other people. But it's interesting you say that, because since seeing more Black faces around, since we've all come back to the office, I've made an active effort to go and try and say hello to as many people as possible, because I know what that feels like, to feel isolated and to not feel like you have an ally or a friend or somebody who you feel that you can come to with a concern, a problem, an issue. And I've made a point to if I see someone, I'm going to go and introduce myself, because I wish somebody did that for me when I was in a more junior position in these companies. I wish somebody had made themselves known and available, that if you've got a problem, if you've got an issue, if you've got a concern, whatever it is, you just want to have a chat with somebody who is also Black. I'm never going to question why, but to put myself out there, I'm that's something I've actively done, because I know what it's like to be in that seat and to have things going on around us and feeling, just a little bit alone in the ether. And it's not so every day you're lonely just because you're Black, but there are some conversations, I think this may have been discussed off recording, but there are some things that we experience or we may have seen or felt that can only be really truly empathized or sympathized with by somebody who would have experienced something similar. And so it's important for that allyship, that friendship to exist amongst different groups, that you have that network that you can rely on. Because like I said before, we spend an awful lot of our time at work.
We do. And
to add something to that. And I think, again, back to the point of active allyship, having this group would encourage debates like these to continue all through the year, not just for Black History Month. And I think it would be a way to increase visibility, not just to people of colour within the organisation, other Black people, because we know we exist when I see you. But it's spreading our voices louder to other teams, other departments who may want to also learn more about our experiences, so they could join just to be part of the conversation, because it includes everyone. It isn't just us.
You don't want to kind of have your own thing and be divided in that. You just want it to be an open conversation and find people of like-mindedness that you can feel supported by. In all forums. Exactly. I think that's brilliant, and it's food for thought, because people sometimes don't. It's difficult. We're all busy. People get stuck in their own silos, and you think something as simple as going up to someone and just, like you do, making that first introduction, little, things that you can change in your ether that don't always involve a massive group seismic shift, but that can start to foster that inclusivity and shared experiences, without having to need to rely on a forum such as a podcast on a specific month that references a particular issue, but it's an ongoing conversation to create that. Talking about active allyship as opposed to just allyship, what are the key differentiators, and what can senior leadership do to actively show up for the Black community or for any other minority community.
Make it clear that you're not
Against?
not against a marginalized group in a way, and making that belief clear in some way, and then it ends. That's just the very base of allyship. But that doesn't necessarily change the situation for these marginalized groups. People who hold positions of power have the power to make the change. So clear, just by stating, oh, okay, I'm not racist, for example. But also, people who are racist say they're not racist, but their actions make the difference. That's what differentiates between, someone who's, this is a silly example, someone who is and isn't racist, but then actively challenging those racist ideas or prejudices, make the difference. And also learning more about the challenges and prejudices these marginalized groups face. Because even if you are an ally, and you may be active in the knowledge you have, there are multiple different issues which maybe I'm not even aware of from someone else's lived experience. So you also have to be active listening, learning, and understanding. So you're covering not just one issue, you're truly trying to understand the difficulties, and from that you can learn how best to try and tackle them using the power senior people have
to make the difference.
Yeah.
Actually, the physicality of showing up rather than the verbiage of saying, I am showing up for you. What are the key differences to that?
So I think for people in the senior positions, particularly like within the workplace, right? If there are employee working groups, whether they're doing the launch, they're in a collaboration space. Let's say it's called the collaboration space. And it doesn't take much effort for you to turn up to that room for 30 minutes, sit through the presentation, digest a bit of information, learn something, grab a cake and go. Yeah. But what it does say to the people who were in that room is, I've taken time out of my day to be present and let you know that I'm an ally to this cause. And I think that's so important for particularly the younger people or people who are newer to the team to see your presence there, to know that you support these causes. Because I think when we think about allyship, there's definitely going to be like grades. There's grades to everything, right? I think just saying, I'm not racist, we know that's not good enough. Because if you just say, I'm not racist, great, you're taking personal responsibility. You're not really doing much else. It just means you're a decent person. Like, that's the bare minimum for like waking up in the day. I'm not going to be racist. Great, cool.
Yeah.
I wasn't planning on being racist today either. Like, that's not an accomplishment. Yeah. But to be an active ally means, right, I'm going to try and understand the ways in which some other people may be negatively affecting the Black people around me. And I'm going to be aware of that. I'm not going to ask you to take on a burden or do anything. Just hear us when we say, I think this is an issue because of X. And then think about what you might be able to do, even if it's just listening. Right. Even if it's just being a shoulder to maybe not cry on, maybe physically cry on, we don't know. But being present and saying, right, I'm going to be here if you need to talk about anything, and having people around you know that is something that you're able to help and provide them with. You're not going to be able to solve every issue. You're not going to be able to stand up to every horrible thing that may happen in somebody's life. But what you can do is make it known that you do not agree with that, and that you are there to support your team, your colleagues, whatever it might be, because having that presence is very important in knowing that you have friends in this space.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with both of those points wholeheartedly. I think we do try to foster that as much as possible here, but again, always room for change, always room for more physical support, I think, like actually physically being there for someone. And I think those are all tangible steps that Kubrick and all organizations can take towards making that real difference. Again, we are celebrating Black History Month. We are celebrating, your accomplishments and talking about how your experiences at work. But what does the month actually mean to the both of you?
I think for me, it's a bittersweet month, because while I love celebrating Black history, I think it's almost kind of awful that we need to have a Black History Month.
Of course.
Because Black British history is just British history. And if, there weren't unfortunately, a bit of a racial undertone with the history of this country, Black history would just be taught alongside all history. Yeah. It should just be history. The the thing I love about it, it means that we get this time to really elevate and amplify certain stories and voices. That is going to be necessary until we accept that Black people have been in Britain for a really, really long time and have been a part of its history. Good, bad, ugly, all of it. But it's wonderful that we have the opportunity to talk about this so positively and to highlight these things. But at the same time, I do wish it wasn't necessary.
Yeah, I completely understand that. Again, for you, maybe completely different. Alex, so do you want to say sort of what it means to you?
Yeah, very similar to Keisha. It gives me now an opportunity to really celebrate. Before, when I was in school, it was more of a dark month. It always seemed quite scary and dark and upsetting, really. But I do appreciate the fact that it gives us a chance to reflect and celebrate, and also think about how we can still combat injustices in the world today. But like you said, it shouldn't be necessary to have. It should be discussed year round. It shouldn't just be 1 month in the year. It should be an ongoing debate. But then at the same time, at where we are currently, it does seem necessary that we need to have this month, otherwise it may just not be spoken about in some circles at all.
The stories get forgotten, the history gets kind of lost or diluted, or the narrative isn't even owned by people who've experienced those things or are affected by that history or that those lines of story. So
that have been passed down generationally, of course.
Do you know what I mean? So it should be celebrated. It's a wonderful thing to celebrate. I just wish they were celebrated throughout the year as regular events, or you know, moments to kind of commemorate historical figures.
Yeah, of course.
But hey, I'm not going to complain too much.
No, and I think
love October.
Exactly. And it honestly is. It is a really. I love to see the positives in everything to do with the diversity, equity, inclusion piece, in terms of look how far we've come. And I think that you guys have really highlighted your own stories, positive, negatively, and the steps that you're tangibly taking to hopefully create something better for the future. And that's really what's important. It's to honor the legacy and the memories and the stories, but also looking to turn that into tangible action to make that difference going forward. So I'm really happy that we've all been discussing it this podcast, and thank you both so much for coming on and sharing your own personal journeys through Black History Month. Thank you both.
Thank you.